Good afternoon and welcome to Sensible Financial Planning's webinar, What are CCRCs and Are They for Me? I'm Carrie Fristow and I will be your moderator. Today, Rick Fine, Sensible Financial's Principal and Director of Financial Planning, will talk about CCRCs and what you need to know to decide if they're the right place for you. Rick Fine has been working with clients at Sensible for 19 years. He has an MBA from Babson College and is a certified financial planner. You can see all of our past webinars on Sensible Financial's website at www.sensiblefinancial.com/webinars. You can also register on that same page for upcoming webinars through a link in Sensible Financial's newsletter, which will be published later this month, or again at sensiblefinancial.com/webinars. Rick is going to have a Q&A session at the end of his presentation. And if you have a question for him, the best place is to put it into the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. Rick is going to answer as many questions as he has time for, although he can't give personal advice. There isn't time to gather that kind of information or gather the context necessary for him to answer accurately. Rick's contact information we will tell you at the end of the webinar, and it'll also be in the follow-up email that you get with a recording of today's webinar. Now, Rick will begin by highlighting the takeaways from today's presentation. Take it away, Rick.
Thank you, Carrie, and thank you everyone for joining me today. So in a minute, I'm going to talk in depth about continuing care retirement communities and how to know if they're for you. But first, I want to just define a couple of terms that'll help you understand the rest of the webinar. So the first one is long-term care. So what does that really mean, long-term care? Long-term care is very different from healthcare or medical care. It's more personal or custodial care. And it enables one to perform with human assistance certain activities of daily living, or ADLs, as well as instrumental activities of daily living, or IADLs. So activities of daily living are on the right side of your screen. There are 6 of them, and one is eating, the ability to feed yourself, walking, dressing, bathing or showering, the ability to transfer from a bed to a chair, or going to the toilet. And if you can't do one of those activities of daily living without significant human assistance from somebody else, then you are probably going to need some sort of long-term care. And then there are instrumental activities of daily living, which, although not shown on the screen here, they are things like, for example, driving, going grocery shopping, being able to handle your finances, paying your bills, or doing yard work. So those would be instrumental activities of daily living. Now, long-term care can be provided by someone you know, such as an adult child, or you can hire a professional. And they can be provided in your home. You can have somebody come into your home and help you with things. Or you can get it through by going to an assisted living facility, or if you need a lot of long-term care, going to a skilled nursing facility. So it's important to remember that long-term care is different from healthcare or medical care. Although in a skilled nursing facility, you would probably get both. You get long-term care assistance, personal assistance rather, but you'd also have probably some nursing help, such as dressing a wound or something like that. So here are some statistics about aging and long-term care. And this was taken from the US Department of Health and Human Services regarding aging and long-term care. Approximately 60% of us will need assistance at some point in our life with things like getting dressed, driving to appointments, or making meals at some point in our lives. Now, that doesn't mean that 60% of us are going to end up in a nursing home. It may mean that we'll just have to have somebody help us do those things even if we're in our own home. Someone turning age 65 today has almost a 70% chance of needing some type of long-term care services and support in their remaining years. 1/3 of today's 65-year-olds may never need long-term care support, but 20% will need it for longer than 5 years. Women tend to need care longer on average than men do, simply because women tend to live longer than men do on average. And then finally, 37% of people who receive long-term care spend at least 1 year in an assisted living or skilled nursing facility. So it's important to plan for our long-term care. Unfortunately, most people do not. And there are a couple of reasons for that. One is it is very difficult to plan for something that you don't even know if it's going to happen, or if you'll need any care, or when you'll need care, or how much care you'll need, or how long it will go for, or what type. The second reason that people often don't plan for long-term care is that, frankly, it's unpleasant to think about the fact that at some point in our lives, our bodies are going to fail us, and maybe our mind will fail us. So people tend to sort of brush it under the rug, sweep it under the rug. Geriatric care managers, and I should define what geriatric care manager is. Sometimes they call them aging life care managers. These are people who are specially trained, usually have some social work background. They're specially trained to work with people to assess an individual for their need for long-term care, either now or in the future, and then to help them find the resources that they will need. And sometimes it's as simple as putting together an aging plan for them, even if they're living independently. Unfortunately, geriatric care managers report that many people first contact them for help when a family member is already in crisis mode. In fact, I spoke to a geriatric care manager a couple of weeks ago who said that 95% of the cases she receives are already in crisis mode because people just have not planned. The problem with not planning for how you want to age is that there are likely going to be fewer senior housing options available if something does happen, if you have a stroke or whatever, because a lot of senior housing facilities or communities have long waiting lists. And when you are in a crisis, you can't wait 6 months to a year. You have to take the first thing that comes along, and that's usually not what your first choice would be for a housing situation, and it can often be substandard care. And then finally, and something people don't realize, is that if you don't plan and you have a crisis, often your family dynamics can be negatively impacted. Often there's one child of several children of yours, if you're the person who needs care, and they have to make decisions in a pinch, and they don't have time to hold a family meeting, and that can cause some friction among family members. So it really is a good idea to plan, if at all possible, although it is difficult to do so. So let's take a look at what are the kinds of older adult living options, and I call them congregate older adult living options. Congregate just means community living. And you can see on the left side under the option, we've got independent living, we've got assisted living, we've got nursing facilities, and then we have CCRCs, or continuing care retirement communities. So let's look at independent living. And again, this is not your individual home. This is some sort of a community, like a 55 plus retirement community. So they will have apartments. Sometimes they'll have small homes or cottages. They will offer up to 1 meal per day, and you'll probably have a full kitchen in your unit, so you can make your other meals on your own, but you'll be able to go to a dining facility, one of the dining halls that they have on campus, and have at least 1 meal a day. And then there are a wide variety of activities that these independent living communities offer. Everything from bringing in lecturers to movies to concerts, or even going off-site to some of those things. But if you need long-term care, if you need personal assistance, the help will be limited, and you'll probably have to hire it in and have it in your own apartment, and it'll be on your dime. You'll have to pay for it. Then there are assisted living facilities. And again, these are standalone facilities. Sometimes they include memory care for people with cognitive issues. They have small apartments, and they will offer 3 meals a day. They usually have a community kitchen and a chef that prepares all 3 meals for you. The activities will be focused mostly inside the institution, although if you're mobile enough, they might have activities off the campus. And then if you need personal care, then it'll be available to you. And there may be some nursing care, although some assisted living facilities, because if they're licensed by the state, they may not be able to offer nursing help, and you'll have to hire a private nurse. If you need a lot of long-term care, then you would presumably go into a skilled nursing facility, also known as a nursing home. They again have small apartments. They're either individual or shared, depending on what you pay for. All of your meals will be provided in that community kitchen by a chef. And the activities will be mostly focused in the institution, simply because people who are already in a nursing home are probably not that mobile. And then they will give you lots of help and a lot of skilled nursing. Then there's the CCRC, or Continuing Care Retirement Community. And that basically is independent living, assisted living, and nursing facilities all on the same campus. The dining, how much dining, how many meals are provided as part of the service fee depends on whether you're in your independent living unit or you're in assisted living, where 3 meals per day instead of 1 would be provided. They have a variety of activities, a lot of activities, both on and off campus. And if you need personal care, long-term care, then you'll be able to move from your independent living unit to the assisted living facility or the nursing facility without ever having to leave the campus. And in fact, you can often bring in personal care if you just need a few hours of it per week or per day. Then you could bring it into your independent living unit. And it really should be mentioned here, this is really important, that congregate living solves a big problem for older adults. And that is isolation and loneliness. Isolation and loneliness in older adults is actually an epidemic. And one of the reasons is that as you get older, you are less mobile often, so you don't really get around as much. You might be indoors more. And also your social network can really deteriorate as your friends and neighbors either die or they move away. Sometimes they themselves move into community living, or they move out of state to be closer to their children. So isolation and loneliness is a big problem. And congregate living, whether it's continuing care retirement communities or 55 plus communities, can really help with that particular problem. So you might be asking, is community living right for me? It's not for everybody. There are 5 key questions I think you should ask yourself to determine whether community living is right for you. One is, how might your physical, mental, and emotional needs change as you age? Will you be able to, for example, get from the first floor of your home to the second floor of your home? Will you be able to negotiate the stairs coming up, from the driveway to the front door of your home? And also, there are mental considerations or cognitive considerations. When you're 80 years old or 85 years old, will you be able to handle things like personal finance and pay your bills? One of the first symptoms of somebody with cognitive impairment is that their bills go unpaid. So you have to think about that. And also, again, as I said before, your emotional needs might change and your social network might change as well. The second question to ask is, could your current home support these changing needs in your remaining years? So for example, could you put a stair lift, install a stair lift from your first floor to your second floor? If you were not able to negotiate the stairs. Would you be able to put a wheelchair ramp up to your front door? So, you know, and also maybe you would want to move your bedroom from the second floor to the first floor, and you could have your upstairs for a home health aid, a live-in, if you needed that. So would your house support that in its current form, or would you have to make renovations? The third question to ask is, do you have a family history of needing long-term care? If you're one of your parents, mom or dad, needed to be in a nursing home or an assisted living facility, or one of your grandparents, there's an increased likelihood that you may need that as well at some point in your life. The fourth question is it realistic to expect your children to provide the care that you might need, or your friends and neighbors to remain close by? So I already addressed the friends and neighbors issue. They may move away from you over time as well. But it's worth talking about your children. One of the most common comments I get from people when we're talking about how they want to age, where they want to live as they age, they say two things. They say, you know, I want to stay in my home and I don't want to be a burden to my children. Well, those two things can be contradictory. You know, if you want to stay in your home, chances are if one of your children lives nearby, they're the first people who are going to be providing long-term care for you, or at least the first people you'd want to. So, so those two sentences, or those two statements, can be a little bit contradictory at times. And, you know, your children may be raising their own children, and they may also be working full-time, and they may not be able to, they may have to actually reduce their work hours, which would reduce their income. So it can be quite stressful on children if they need to provide significant assistance to an elderly parent. And also they may be out of state. And then the fifth question is, how would I fare in a congregate living arrangement or a community living arrangement? Is, you know, living amongst a lot of people where there's a lot of social activity going on. You don't have to participate, but, you know, most people would want to, at least a little bit. If you're really an introvert and you just can't stand the thought of living so close next to people and going to a dining facility where there's a lot of other people that you'd be meeting or talking with, then, you know, maybe community living is not for you, and maybe a CCRC is not for you. So these are important questions to ask just to determine if community living is right for you. So let's focus on continuing care retirement communities. So what is a CCRC? Well, as I said, it is an independent living, it is assisted living, and it is skilled nursing, all on the same campus. You never have to leave the campus. There's an emphasis on convenience, on community, and on preserving health. There are a lot of conveniences that are taken care of for you that you would normally have to do in your own home. There is an emphasis on community. There are a lot of clubs and committees to join, and, you know, you'll always have somebody around. And then there's an emphasis on preserving health. And so there's a lot of emphasis on exercise and other physical activities and social activities as well, because those help to preserve health. And then there are approximately 2,000 continuing care communities in the United States. More are under construction, and there's probably going to be a lot more because as the US population ages, and it is aging quite rapidly. So how does a CCRC differ from other senior living arrangements? Well, again, as I said, it offers 3 levels of care as opposed to 1 or 2, such as what you'd find in a assisted living facility or a standalone nursing facility. There is a minimum move-in age that's higher than you might find in one of these 55+ communities, which obviously you have to be at least 55 to move in. With a CCRC, you have to be at least 62. And this is nationwide. They don't differ. Finally, there's healthcare, health requirements. You have to be relatively healthy to move into a CCRC. Now, relatively healthy is a subjective term. Maybe a better way of saying it is that a CCRC wants to make sure that you can live independently for the first 3 to 5 years that you're in the community. So you can have a health issue. There are people with diabetes or even early stage Parkinson's disease who are eligible to move into a CCRC. But as long as you're able to live independently, and most importantly, you're not a danger to yourself or your neighbors, because if you are, that would really disqualify you. And they will put you through some sort of a health exam. It won't be exhaustive. They might ask you some questions to assess your mental, your cognitive capabilities. They may do some balance exercises with you. Other CCRCs might ask for some health records from your doctor, but it won't be a full medical exam. And then finally, it's worth noting that with a CCRC, unlike other community living arrangements, there are some CCRCs offer contracts that are very robust, where you pay a certain amount when you move in, and that amount, other than inflation adjustments each year, tends not to change, even if you need a significant level of care, such as you have to move into assisted living. And these are called life care contracts. There are many different kinds of contracts, and I will cover those in the second webinar in October. But the first kind of contract is the most robust one. It's a life care contract, and that's considered implied long-term care insurance in the monthly fee. So it's a steady monthly fee, except for inflation increases. And no matter what kind of care you need at any point in your life, you'll pay about that amount, as opposed to having to pay market rates for assisted living or for skilled nursing, which can be very expensive. And so that might be a kind of contract that would appeal to you. And again, I'll go more into this in the second webinar in October. So there are many conveniences and amenities that are included in a CCRC's monthly fee. So let's look at what those are. Again, chef prepared meals. So when you move into the independent unit, you would get at least one chef prepared meal a day in the dining facility. You don't have to use it. You can make all your meals in your apartment if you want, but you'll have a meal ticket, one meal ticket per day, and you have to use it by the end of the month, all 30 meal tickets, or they don't roll over into the next month. Your electricity and your heat are included in the monthly fee. Light housekeeping is included. So weekly or bi-weekly, depending on the contract you sign, they will come in and they will change your linens. They will clean up the kitchen, the bathroom. They'll do some vacuuming. That's part of the monthly fee. Household appliances. So you'll have a full set of kitchen appliances, and you'll have usually a stacked washer and dryer in your apartment. All maintenance and repairs are included, including the outside of the facility as well as in your apartment. If something breaks, somebody will come in from the community and they'll fix it. Gardening and landscaping on the outside is included. Concierge services. So with concierge services, they will take in packages. They will mail out packages for you. You'll have a mailbox. In fact, part of the concierge, you will be able to schedule a shuttle service. They provide limited shuttle service for you to take you to doctor's appointments and grocery shopping and maybe to the train station. Parking is included. Uncovered parking is usually included. I think the covered parking or garage parking is usually extra. Snow removal, including snow removal from your car, is often included. You'll have the use of a pool. You'll have the use of a gym, and including group classes, exercise classes that are led by a personal trainer. That's all part of the monthly fee. There's a lot of on-site entertainment. You'll have use of the activity and meeting rooms for your clubs and your committees. And again, shuttle service, which I just mentioned. So what services are not included in the monthly fee? And by the way, I should add that this is not uniform across the board for all 2,000 CCRCs. This is what we found on average that's included and not included. But you really should ask when you go and talk to somebody at the particular community that you might be interested in, what's included. What's not included is medical and dental care. CCRCs will usually require that you keep a personal physician and a dentist and maybe any specialists you have. And those will be billed to Medicare. They won't be part of the monthly fee. If you need a home health aide when you're living in the independent living unit in the regular apartment, some CCRCs will actually include it, but a lot of them don't, and you need to ask. If you're in the assisted living or skilled nursing facilities, abbreviated here by AL and SN, then you will have a health aide there. So that will be included. But there's a question about whether it will be included when you're in your apartment where you're living independently. Some do, some don't. You have to ask. And even the ones that do will only include maybe 1 hour a day. But that may be all you need. Any additional meals beyond the 1 meal a day in the independent when you're living independently would be extra. Any guest meals, if you have people over, family members, friends, you'll have to pay for them, or I suppose they could pay for themselves, but you'd probably want to treat them. Takeout and delivery are extra. Covered parking is usually extra. Hair salons, barbershops, and spa services, you will often find those on the campus, but they're usually extra. Additional housekeeping, if you need something beyond what I explained before, the linens and the light housekeeping, you'll have to pay for that. If you need a private, or if you want a private personal trainer, that would be extra. The personal trainers that are free come with the group classes. If you want tickets to events that are off campus, so if there's a group going to the theater or a concert, you'll have to pay for those tickets, for your own ticket. And then finally, they do have shuttle service, but if you need transportation to places that the shuttle doesn't go, and usually the shuttle is confined to maybe a 5-mile radius and only certain places like the shopping center and your maybe a hospital or a doctor's office. If you want to go someplace else or beyond the 5-mile radius, then you'd have to pay for your own transportation. So what's it like to live in a CCRC? Well, there are 5 things worth mentioning here. The first one is that you're going to meet a lot of friendly people rather quickly. The first thing you'll notice is there will be a welcoming committee. The second thing you'll notice is that people will be asking you to join clubs and committees. They'll be meeting you in the hallway. People often wear name tags. Even the residents will wear name tags because there's so many people, and it's easy to forget people's names, especially if your memory is not so good. And then obviously you're going to meet people in the dining facility and also at the events that they have on and off campus. So if you're an introvert and you can't stand the thought of meeting a lot of people, maybe this is not for you. You may be surprised by all there is to do there. And in a minute, I'm going to give you some examples of all there is to do there. But there's a lot. And you'll never be bored. Third, you'll have privacy when you want it. Even though there are a lot of people milling around on the outside, you'll have your own personal space. But it won't be as big as what you may be used to if you're living in a single family home. You'll appreciate not having to do a lot of mundane chores. And this is a picture of a front-loaded washing machine. You'll probably have to do your own laundry, but again, the linens will be done for you. But it's meant to represent that, you won't have to do snow shoveling. You won't have to take care of the lawn. And you won't have to do the housekeeping in most cases. So there's a lot of things that the CCRC will do for you as part of the monthly fee. And you can concentrate more or focus more on the things that you really want to do that maybe you weren't able to do when you were working, and you want to spend more time in retirement doing them. And you'll be as busy or as unbusy as you want to be. This is your retirement. It's your life. It's your space. You can do with what you want with it. So I talked about that there are a lot of activities that go on at a continuing care retirement community. And it is really true. If you look at their monthly calendars, and often the monthly calendars are, they include them in a marketing packet when they send it to you, if you request one. You'll see that they have book clubs, they have art classes, they have pottery classes, they even have pottery studios and art studios. They have, you can go off campus and do shopping. There's trivia nights, there's on-campus concerts. They'll bring in chamber music concert ensembles. They'll bring in theater. There's Tai Chi and there's yoga. I've heard of even they're having bocce, you know, the Italian game with balls on the back lawn. There's off-campus fine dining. There's computer training. You can use some of those rooms that are used for committee meetings. You can use them for classes, and some of the residents actually are able to give classes on the things that they know. So it wouldn't be uncommon to have a computer class given by one of the residents, or a resident who teaches you how to use the iPhone or the iPad. There's gardening clubs. Sometimes there's even community gardens. There's folk dancing. There's poker, bridge, and mahjong. You can go to the symphony. The shuttle will take you to the symphony, theaters, music, museums. They bring in lecture series. They have professors from local universities who will come in and talk on a variety of topics, from astrophysics to the latest invention in biotech, to, you know, social economics and politics. And a lot of CCRCs actually have movie theaters, or they have an auditorium where they show movies. So this just begins to scratch the surface. I couldn't fit any more on here, but this gives you an idea that there's so much to do there. So just to wrap up on the advantages of a CCRC, it is a nurturing, supportive environment. A lot of the people there are basically in the same age group as you are. A lot of people have the same passions, interests, sometimes even the same medical conditions. They have a lot of CCRCs will have support groups for people with, say, Parkinson's or MS or another condition. The congregate living helps prevent isolation and depression, as I mentioned before. You have easy access to personal care and wellness care in one location. You won't have to ever leave the community if you need extra personal care. Many conveniences free up the time to do the things that you want to do. There's an emphasis on leisure activities, both physical, intellectual, and social activities. You'll have a sense of physical safety and security when you're living there. They have 24/7 security. If visitors will have to sign in, they'll be their faces will be scanned. There's just a lot of security about who's coming and going. And finally, you'll have peace of mind, and even more importantly, your children, if you have children, will have peace of mind knowing that you basically planned for your contingencies. That if you do have an event, such as a medical event, that there won't be a crisis. You'll have what you need, and there will be people there to support you and make sure you get the level of care that you need. Some of the things that you hear from residents and their families when I talk to people in CCRCs, or when I talk to family members, these are some quotes of what they've said to me. Residents will say, "I've never been so busy with things that I really want to do." They're probably busier than they were when they were living in their single-family home. Since I moved in, my social life has blossomed. I no longer feel so isolated. I'm relieved that I no longer need to deal with snow shoveling and chores around the house. It's nice not to have to cook all the time. And then the residents' children, you might hear them say, "My friends are so busy, my parents are so busy, I found it difficult to get on their social calendar. Since my mom moved to a CCRC, I worry less about how she's doing. I know that she will be taken care of." And finally, I live away from my parents, so I'm relieved that if they ever need care, they will have all the support that they need right where they live. So I've given you the advantages of living in a CCRC, but here are some considerations. I don't call them disadvantages because they're not necessarily disadvantages for everyone, but they are disadvantages for some. So one, the big one here is that continuing care communities can be really expensive. It's, in the Northeast, it's not unusual to find, usually there's an entry fee and a monthly fee, and the entry fees for, a 2-bedroom could run you $900,000. Now you get some of that back, and in the next webinar, in the webinar number 2 in October, I'm going to talk more about the refund policies that the various contracts offer. But in most cases, you'll get some sort of a refund when you leave the facility, or when you die, it'll go to your estate. But they can be really, really pricey. And also the monthly fees can be pricey as well. And the monthly fees tend to increase the larger the unit that you buy into. There are very long waiting lists for new applicants. The waiting list will depend on, or the length of the waiting of how long you wait will depend usually on the size of the apartment that you want. If you want a smaller apartment, you may only have to wait 3 to 6 months. If you want a larger apartment, say a 2-bedroom or a 2-bedroom with den, or even a cottage, some of these CCRCs offer standalone cottages like homes, but with all the amenities of the CCRC. Those waiting lists can be up to 5, even 10 years, depending on the community. So this is another reason why you really don't want to wait too long. If you think CCRCs are for you, you want to find 1 or 2 that you might be interested in and explore them, and then get on their waiting list, because it can be a very long wait. Community living requires abiding by certain rules. And it's just like if you lived in an apartment building and you were a renter, you have to live by certain rules. You probably can't have a charcoal grill on your balcony. You can't have people visitors in at 3 in the morning. So every community is going to have a set of rules. And if you're a person who doesn't really like rules, living by other people's rules, then, that's something to consider. It may not be for you. But those rules are there for a good reason, because you're living amongst a lot of people. And if there are no rules, then there could be a lot of chaos in the community. Also, you must be reasonably healthy to move in. And I mentioned what the health requirements are. They do differ. There are some CCRCs that will not allow you in if you have any kind of major health conditions, such as early stage Parkinson's. They just say no. Others will allow you to move in. They may actually add some money to the contract. So for example, in the first year that you might need skilled nursing, they may charge you an extra fee for the skilled nursing over and above what they would normally charge if you have a pre-existing major health condition. So every CCRC is different, and you really need to ask the sales staff what their policies are. Also, there's less private space when you move into a CCRC. There will most likely be less private space. I should put it that way. Most people are coming from a single family home, which is often, 2,000 square feet, maybe 3,000 or 4,000 square feet. And one of the reasons why they want to leave their home is because it's too much for them at an advanced age for them to keep up. But you have to understand that when you move into an apartment, it's probably going to be somewhere, around maybe anywhere from 800 square feet to 1,500 or 1,600 square feet. You might get a larger apartment that's 2,000, but it's going to be most likely a little bit less, or a lot less than what you're used to. And a lot of people who move into these communities are not used to it. You get used to it after a while, most people do, but it's something that you need to understand. You won't be able to walk outside into a big backyard that you once had. But of course, you could walk along on the campus, and if they have hiking trails there, you can walk on the walking trails. And then finally, CCRCs, just like any other business, have been dealing with recent trends. The first one, the most obvious one, is COVID. And COVID has been a real problem, especially for nursing homes, whether it is a CCRC or a standalone nursing home. I'm sure you've seen it in the news. And some CCRCs have lost patients. And those who, even those that haven't lost residents, I should say, even people in the independent living units, they've had lockdowns. They've had to ask people to stay in their apartments for weeks on end. And that has been very isolating, and it's been challenging for CCRCs. And you might want to explore, how they would handle things in the future if we get a recurrence of the pandemic, or if it gets worse. And then also inflation. Every business has been dealing with inflation. Obviously, people are raising prices left and right. It remains to be seen whether a CCRC will raise its prices to keep up with inflation. Inflation has been 8 or 9%, and most CCRC inflationary increases from year to year are 3 to 5%. That's about the average. So it remains to be seen if they're going to increase their fees next year more than 5%. But that could add some strain on people's finances. And then also CCRCs, just like any other business, have been dealing with staffing shortages, mostly because of COVID and the supply chain issues. And staffing shortages can be a problem in CCRCs. The most likely place you'll see them is in the dining facilities. And that's mostly because dining facilities tend to have a lot of turnover anyway. But the more important one and the more critical one is in the assisted living wing of the community, or the skilled nursing wing of the community. And some CCRCs have had to, in order to keep that ratio of residents to staff, they've had to actually shut down part of their skilled nursing wing or their assisted living wing until they can staff up again. And it's more difficult to staff up in assisted living and in skilled nursing than it is in, say, the dining hall, get waiters or whatever, because the staff in the skilled nursing facilities and the assisted living facilities are much more highly trained. And so there's just fewer of them to staff up. So that can be a problem. So you should ask the salesperson when you do talk to them about what staffing shortages they have, where they're located, and what are they doing about them. So how do you go about identifying CCRC candidates? For those of you who think that it may be worth exploring, it's not for everybody, as I said. Well, the first thing you want to do is you want to do some research. You want to select a geographical area of the country. You might not necessarily want to live in a CCRC in the same town that you live in now. You might want to live closer to your children. You might want to move to a more picturesque area of the country. So you need to select a geographical area. Once you do that, and also you can do that by using some online resources. So I've listed 3 here. They may be a little bit difficult to see. These are URLs. And Kerry will send around this short list of websites addresses in her follow-up email to you. But there are a few websites you might want to go to. mylifesite.net, for example, you can do a geographic search. It's quite a good search tool for that. So you can find not only geographic areas, but you can find information about each of the CCRCs in those locations. There's also longtermcare.gov. This is a government website that has more basic information about long-term care, such as what it is and who might provide it and where you might get it and what types of care. So that might be something that you'd want to look at just to fill out your knowledge about what long-term care is. And then there's a website called aginglifecare.org. And this also has a lot of information about long-term care, but it also can help you locate a geriatric care manager or a older adult life care manager And those people would be a great resource for you to talk to if you're planning how you want to age. Not necessarily for CCRCs. They may say, well, you know, you don't need to go to a CCRC at any point. You may, you know, if you really want to live at home, you can do things to your home to help you age in place. These are the people who can really advise you on that. So I would encourage you to make use of a geriatric care manager in the planning stage. But anyway, you want to identify a small number of CCRC communities if you're interested in CCRCs, and then you want to request marketing brochures. And a marketing brochure will be sent to you, or sometimes they have it online now. They'll have a sample contract that you can look at. They'll have annual reports. They'll have a calendar of events, and they'll have price lists for the different apartments and cottages. I would schedule a tour with the communities that you're most interested in. And if you're single, I would highly recommend that you bring a friend or a loved one along. For no other reason than it's better to have a second pair of ears and eyes when you're touring the facility and you're asking questions. And they should take good notes. You want to interview the sales marketing director. Sometimes they're sales directors, sometimes they call them sales and marketing directors. And also, they can't always answer some of the more numerical questions, things like, you know, would I be eligible for a tax deduction on some of the monthly fee or the entrance fee? They may not know the answer to that. A lot of them do, but some of them don't. And so you might want to talk to the finance director as well. And then also you want to talk to residents. You might know somebody who already lives in a CCRC that you're interested in. Schedule an appointment to come over, and maybe they'll take you to lunch so you can experience what it's like to eat there. But talk to them without the salesperson and ask them some questions. And by the way, in the second webinar in October, I'm going to give you a set of questions to ask the sales and the finance directors and the residents. Some really important questions that you want to get answers to. You want to see if you can attend on-campus events. You'll have to get permission from the sales director. Sometimes they don't do that, but others will allow you to attend an on-campus event, such as a concert or something like that. Sometimes they'll actually have events on campus specifically for sales prospects. So I'm sure they would let you know about those. And then, you know, while you're there, you can talk to residents as well. Eat in their dining hall. The food in these places, it's mixed. It has a mixed reputation. Some people like the food, some people don't. Some of the food is just not good in some CCRCs, and some of it is outstanding. But you really want to get your own have your own opinion about that. And then finally, see if you can schedule an overnight visit. A lot of these CCRCs have actually guest quarters, and they may charge you a fee for staying the weekend, but maybe you should stay the weekend and see what it's like to live there. So that would really help. Okay, I think, Carrie, we're ready to take some questions.
Yes, wonderful. Okay, one of the attendees had a question. How do CCRCs typically handle couples moving in?
That's
yeah,
a good. Yeah. So a couple moving in, if they move into, usually they'll move into the independent living unit first. I'm not sure if that was the nature of the question. There is another question that I can answer similar to that. You know, if you're a couple, then you would move into an independent living unit. They would charge a little bit extra for a second person. If one member of the couple were to ever need to go into the assisted living wing, which I think may be the origin of that question, Carrie, then depending on the contract you sign, you either would have an extra cost or not. So these robust contracts, these life care contracts that I talked about earlier, sort of these soup to nuts, whatever you need, it's the same fee. You would be able to have one spouse move into assisted living or skilled nursing while the quote unquote well spouse, the spouse who is well, could live in their independent living unit, and they wouldn't have to pay any more money. Because again, with those contracts, you're putting the risk on the CCRC. They're absorbing the risk. Whereas with other contracts, where it's more of a fee for service, and it's not sort of one size fits all, you would probably have to pay twice. You'd have to pay for the assisted living, for the one spouse to live in the assisted living unit, and then the other spouse to live in the regular unit. And that can be quite costly. In my next webinar, there wasn't time for this webinar, but in my next webinar, I'm going to talk about how to integrate long-term care insurance if you have it, and why that might be a good thing to have if you don't want one of these robust contracts with implied long-term care insurance. That might help if one spouse has to be in the assisted living facility and the other spouse can stay in the independent unit, independent apartment.
Okay, Andrea asks, how can you assess the financial viability of a CCRC?
Well, you would have, they would send you their annual report. You should certainly ask for an actuarial report. They should be hiring actuaries every year, or every couple of years, to assess whether the pricing is fair, whether the CCRC has the funds that it needs to run its operations. But the financial report would have that. Now, not everybody is capable of or has the skills to read an annual report, which is done by the finance department. But you could take that report to an accountant who is skilled in reading those reports, or may specialize in analyzing the finances of a CCRC. And you should also talk to the finance director and ask them some questions. And again, I'm going to go over this a little bit in the second webinar about the questions that you should ask the finance directors about the viability of the CCRC.
Gordon asks,
and I should add, Carrie, to that, talk to the residents, because the residents will know if the CCRC is failing. And most don't. Most aren't failing. Most are viable. They are somewhat regulated, but the residents will have the inside scoop on that.
Okay. Gordon wonders, how about practicing a profession when you are in a CCRC and not being fully retired? Or in this case, he's saying he would do pro bono law work.
Well, I don't think there would be a problem with that, as long as you're not having clients come to the CCRC. I think they might have restrictions on that. Nor would you want them necessarily coming. You're not going to have an office there. It'll be your private residence. But if you're doing it on Zoom, if you're doing it remotely, or if you're going off campus to see people, there's no law that says you can't have income. There are a lot of people who are in CCRCs who aren't even there a lot of the time. They travel, but you can have income, sure.
Okay. Well, I had a question too, and that is, what about pets?
What about pets?
Can you bring your pets?
No, Carrie, you cannot bring your pet. No, I'm just kidding. Yes, there are a lot of CCRCs will allow pets. They have to be a certain weight. Obviously, they're probably not going to allow Great Danes in your 800 square foot apartment. But if you have a poodle, or something along those lines, or a beagle, or whatever, as long as they're well behaved and they're not a disturbance for the neighbors, then some CCRCs will allow that. Yes. Cats and dogs.
Okay, great. I think that's all the questions we have right now.
Okay. So let me just wrap up, give a summary of what I've been talking about today. Considering congregate living is as much psychological as it is financial. Again, they're not for everybody. And also, it is a long process, just a long psychological process. I have clients who have taken years to decide, and some of them have not decided, and they're still thinking about it. And obviously, the risk there is that if you wait too long, you might develop a condition that will disqualify you from living at a CCRC or at a CCRC. So, take whatever time you need, but you really want to do your homework on these things and make a decision, because there's also that waiting list that I mentioned. It's a big decision with a hefty price tag. You want to do your due diligence, do the research, talk to the people, the staff there, ask the right questions, talk to the residents, ask them questions, go onto the campus, experience it for yourself. CCRCs offer convenience and community, but they're not for everybody. So just be aware. If you feel a CC is right for you, don't wait too long to make the move. I just said that. And then finally, even if a CCRC is not your cup of tea, having a plan in place will help you age with dignity should a health contingency ever occur. And here there's a really strong recommendation for, you should have an aging plan. And you can talk to a geriatric care manager who can actually put one together for you. So that's the summary of today's webinar. I want to thank you for attending. Next time, and the next webinar, the second in the series of 2, will be October 5th. And in that webinar, I'm going to talk about the different types of CCRC contracts. There are multiple different types of contracts, and which ones might be right for which people. What it takes to become eligible, not only in terms of health, but in terms of finances. So I'm going to take you through some examples of people who are thinking of applying to a CCRC and have identified a particular kind of apartment. And I'm going to take you through the kind of financial analysis that the CCRC will do to figure out whether you're eligible or not from a financial standpoint. And then I'll talk about how you evaluate whether a CCRC is worthy of having you as a resident by asking the right questions. And then finally, I'll be talking about long-term care insurance, because a lot of people who are considering CCRCs already have long-term care insurance, and that could affect the kind of contract that you choose. And so I'll be talking about how long-term care insurance integrates with CCRC contracts. So again, thank you very much for attending, and I hope to see you again on October 5th. Back to you, Karen.
Thank you, Rick. As Rick said, his next webinar will be October 5th at 10 a.m. You can sign up on the Sensible website at sensibleFinancial.com/webinars. Also, it was in the chat, the how to sign up for the next webinar. And everyone who registered will receive an email from us with a link to the video that you just saw. So in case you missed part of it, or you want to send, a friend to see it as well, or you need to refer back to it, you will receive a copy of it. Thanks very much for coming, and we'll see you next time.